This is a Bulldog Radio podcast.
It's the MVSP Season 3, Episode 55. It's a beautiful day, and we love being in the studio. Brandon Worth right across from me. I'm Joe Nagy, and what a great show we have for you guys today. A quick Ferris State sports report, as well as a little bit of some college hockey talk. Haven't talked about that in a while, but the Frozen Four is road to the Frozen Four is upon us, so definitely going to be looking forward to that. You know, some NFL free agency talk, since there's been some blockbuster trades, and maybe some other stuff that we might want to talk about. Time permitting, we'll see. But Brandon, why don't we get right into this Ferris State sports report?
Right into it we go. Big matchups this week across the board for all of our spring sports starting up, including tennis, just coming off of a great series against Grand Valley. They're going to be playing tomorrow, as this episode is released Thursday. So it'll be a Friday match against Michigan Tech at home. The women start at 11 o'clock and the men start at 3 o'clock. This time was just changed. So if you planned a week ago to go to this game at the earlier time schedule, oops, and now they're going to be different. So make sure you take your time and go and watch both of our tennis teams play really well. So going to be looking good. I mean, both teams really look coming off of some pretty good performances. Obviously, the women's team would have liked to have the win last Saturday, but I think you still come in with a really positive attitude because you've played some great tennis overall. I mean, we had some great games over spring break, and even prior to that, getting some huge regional wins against teams like Walsh and Hillsdale and some other key GMAC teams that are really strong squads. So there's going to be a lot of momentum rolling into this game, and I mean, even for the women, I think that there's an argument that they can have even an emphasis to play better to really make up for that dreadful loss against Grand Valley last week. Exactly,
because like when you look at that, that's kind of going to be the main battle is between us and Grand Valley, because that was the same thing last season. We topped them, but I think we were only a little bit only edged them out just a little bit. So I think that's what they're going to be looking for, especially against Michigan Tech, who's a solid team. You know, just getting back and righting the ship a little bit, so that way you can kind of make a little bit of an early season run here. But the men's side too, just keeping the energy from the Grand Valley matches is going to be the key for it, because those guys were rolling, and they really showed no signs of keeping putting their foot on the gas. So that's the one thing too, is Michigan Tech, I'm pretty sure they finished middle of the road last season, I think. So it's not the biggest challenge, but it's still going to be a tough one nonetheless, because no team you want to kind of go in thinking you're just going to roll them over, else they're going to kind of surprise you a little bit. But I'm excited for it. I'm covering it for the Torch, so we'll see what happens. Joe will be there. I might make an appearance depending on if I'll be in town or not. But I think obviously going into any GLIAC match is crucial, because I think just some people realize don't realize, that this conference is one of the best, if not, I would strictly argue it's the best in Division II across the board, hands down, right? I believe it. There might be some sports that have better conferences overall, kind of like if you compared it to, we're the Big Ten, right? Across the board, the Big Ten has great competition across every sport, no matter what season, no matter what sport it is. Every time it's great, where SEC football might be just maybe a touch up in caliber, or ACC basketball, but across the board, Big Ten overall, it has hands down everything across the board at the best possible peak. But there's definitely some emphasis that every single one of these games is going to be important. And I mean, especially when you look at the GLIAC standings right now through so far some of the games. I mean, some teams have already gotten their first win in the conference play, including Grand Valley. Skip them. Northwood and Wayne State, some of them. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot to come back from, and I think that there's still a lot of great promise within this season. And I think what's really stood out for me so far is the ability to play well in doubles has been something that we've really been able to do really well. The teamwork, especially indoors, has been a key for us that I think a lot of other teams haven't been able to really grasp the power to steal points. That extra point, it can come in huge, because singles matches, it's really, I don't want to say it's an inconsistency more or less, but there's times where individually, you might not play as well, but when you got a red hot teammate, that can help you, and you can steal that team point. Whereas singles, you might not get that. So, I mean, that team point, it's 1 out of 7.
it's not necessarily seen as significant with a mathematics standpoint. I mean, that's 14% of your possible points, right?
Yeah.
But it's crucial because every time we've had games, especially back in February on the women's side, 3 of the 4 final games of the month were decided by 1 point, 4-3, 4-3, 4-3. And that's what came down to winning and losing was sometimes those doubles points.
And especially with doubles, it's like that's the start of the day, right? Like, yeah, you can get ready and kind of warm ups and stuff like that, and you can be kind of firing when you're on your own. But when you got to start off the match with somebody else and losing that one or not playing super good, it's like you go into your singles with that much more pressure. You go into your singles game like thinking, man, I really need to step up here. I can't play as bad as I did in doubles. So when you get a solid doubles matches, especially across the board, like we've been seeing, like that gives some great momentum going into the singles, and it kind of takes a little bit of pressure off, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, you said it's 1 point, so it's not really that much, but when you go into it and you realize like, all right, we're already up 1-0, we just got to win like 4, or we just got to win 3 of these, and 3 out of like the 4 that we're playing, so it's not gonna be that hard for them, I think, especially if you can really play well in the doubles and kind of get that up. I think that's going to be pretty solid for them.
Yeah, and especially for the women's side, playing Michigan Tech, a team that we were able to beat in Houghton last year pretty handily, 6-1. So that brings you some confidence going in. It's a potential bounce back game, but Tech's going to be a better team overall. But you still have that. You still have that juice, right? You're coming off of that tough loss, and I really hope that brings another energy especially in such a huge caliber conference game, because in reality, you're kind of building from the bottom now, right? So yeah. it kind of stinks there, but it's a welcomed opportunity, because sometimes being at the top too long can hurt you in the long end. And it's a long season, because we're going to be going pretty much until the first week of May. So there's a lot of season left, but every conference game is going to be pivotal for both the men's and the women's side.
Exactly, and that's the one good thing is being up at the top. It's tough, but when you have such a competitive conference, you're always going to be trying to play really well. We got the target on our backs now, especially being reigning champs for both sides. They want to beat us, and we got to play our best each week to be able to match everybody that's going to be coming to town. So
yeah, absolutely. I think what we'll see a lot of in both of these matches is, I think obviously going to be indoors for both of the matches, because they will also be playing on Saturday as well, I believe against Saginaw. So that's going to be a fun game as well to watch at home. But there's going to be quite a bit of pace in all these games, especially likely that it could be indoors, because it's getting warmer outside, but
it's a little spotty.
It is very spotty. The rain, the
40,
wind.
It's 40, a little bit rainy.
Yeah, it's like we're getting like an early dose of the April showers, and obviously that brings May flowers, but we can't play in May. That's when almost the season ends. So obviously we'd love to be playing in May for nationals, but we got to get through April and March 1st. So, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how both teams do on the double side, and the single side is going to be just important, especially the lower matches as well. Just because when you got some top tier players, because we know we have a lot of top tier caliber players. We got the 2 reigning GLIAC Player of the Year candidates, or award winners, I should say, from last year, and obviously candidates for this year, Matisse Greer and Morgan Waller. Obviously, Morgan not playing, but seeing how a lot of these other younger players and even veteran lower pairing players have been playing, because we've seen a lot of great matches from them, and they've been able to get us some big points despite some slip ups near the top. We're talking Josh McDermott, we're talking Benjamin Lordy, Yannick Alexander Mador, and a lot of those guys, Eustace Wall as well. Those guys are pivotal, especially on the men's side, and then on the women's side as well. You got a lot of great players that you can have kind of, it seems like interchangeable, that we've seen them being flexible in their pairing matchups overall over the last couple of games. So seeing how a lot of them play is going to be fun, just because a lot of them coming off of, I hate beating our own drum, but maybe it'll help just a little bit off that dreadful loss last week. But seeing a lot of great players like Sam Stevenson, Patricia Gomez, Parker Nolan playing really well, and then obviously our top players like Sophie DeVita, Brittany Lavinay, Agata Clack as well, being able to play well. That's going to be key for this weekend. We're nice to take 2 going into some road tests coming up next week following that we'll preview Tuesday and Thursday.
For sure. Absolutely. Can't wait for that as well. But What other sports we got on the docket today?
Yeah, other sports on the docket. So we have softball that will also be in action. So I lied. It was not Saginaw. It was Lake State that tennis will be playing on Saturday. Softball will be taking on Saginaw Valley on Saturday, both at 10, I believe it's 12 and 2. And then they'll also be playing on Sunday at Wayne State. So a lot of doubleheader action for all these spring sports. But I mean, for softball, obviously we discussed a lot of this last week. We've seen some great performances overall. I mean, Josie Prince getting GLIAC Player of the Week just a short time ago. But the biggest thing, it's really the consistency. Offensively, I think we're getting a lot better. Defensively and pitching have been our weak points. There's no question there. Obviously, that will improve the more that we are able to play. And obviously, we have some pitchers banged up that haven't been able to get on the mound as of late. So obviously, that's a key factor. So a lot of the younger pitchers are starting to get the mound and the innings and the pitch counts up. So that's good. It's good experience. Obviously, it's kind of a little bit of a curveball for them early on.
Ooh.
Sorry, that was a bad one. I couldn't think of
I didn't
anything
think you
else.
can throw a curveball in softball, can you?
Yeah, you can.
How do you do
A
that?
little spin action.
Yeah, well, I know that there's like
I mean,
what is it, like a drop? There's like drop ball. There's riser.
Yeah,
I mean, there's like changeup and stuff, but I guess it's different.
Yeah,
like, would it be kind of like a slider type deal?
Yeah. It would be more like a slurve, I would say, overall, just because you can't really get that total flip.
You kind of like turn your hand weird.
Yeah,
It doesn't get that overhead rotation at all.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to talk to a softball pitcher and bring him on the show, and we can ask him that
Exactly.
question.
Have
But
to do that sometime.
I know that there is a possibility you can throw a curveball, I say in quotation marks, where it'll be probably more naturally like a slurve, because obviously you can't really flip your hand over that fast. Or if you do, how do you do that? And how many joints do you have in your wrist, for crying out loud?
When you pitch, like, do you have to keep your arm all the way outstretched when you go through? Or can you kind of like whip your arm around?
I think it has to be, I think you'd get maximum velocity the bigger the circle.
Yeah.
Just
but
because
I'm
of
talking
physics.
about like, if you kind of like bring it back and then like snap around your elbow or whatever, you kind of get, I don't know how long your ligaments in your elbow would last there.
Yeah, that would be my one concern, is how strong your elbow would be to be able to take that 80, 60 times a game.
Might need to get some Tommy John in there, but yeah. Back to the team, at least.
My elbow hurts just thinking about this right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like we said, I mean, the pitching obviously hasn't been the greatest, and there's obviously great time to fix that. And I mean, Saginaw is going to be a team that we can certainly do that against. And I mean, you look at a lot of what we've seen over the past years, and we've been able to put together some great games over the past couple of years. It's just the overall consistency, which is, I mean, it's the hardest thing in softball, right?
Yeah.
It's really can be a hit or miss day by day. But I mean, look at Saginaw, they're overall a pretty solid team. I mean, they're 14-8, I believe, right now this year. So we're not totally far behind that at 9-12 overall. So there's definitely some comparison that you can make there. But I mean, obviously going to be playing on their diamond is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think we can definitely give them a good solid run. I'd love to see them get a 2-win sweep out of it, just because that'd be a huge boost confidence-wise for the rest of the season. But I mean, really, our veteran leadership has done really well overall. I mean, we've seen a lot of great play out of like players. Obviously, you can say that there has been a lot of great players by like Paige Courts has been playing really well. I mean, Prince, obviously a little bit younger, but she's been playing very well, especially getting on base for us. And then like Kylie Winkles has had fantastic start to the season. She's batting .406 right now with 17 RBI. She's been a critical part in our lineup offensively. But I mean, you got to give credit to a lot of the opposing teams for being able to out-hit us so far.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's still a lot of time to fix it. And really, I mean, we're going to see an opportunity for that this weekend.
And like, I think the one thing too is just getting the team batting average up. I mean, we're just below 300, which is nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, 278 is pretty solid. I mean, it's better than a lot of other teams that you might see. But I think just getting that up, because we're not really a home run hitting team. We're not like a deep ball kind of heavy team at all. But it's just making sure we can get people on base, and that's one thing we've been struggling to. Only a .350 on base percentage. So, you know, when you are able to get hits and stuff, it's all right when you get a single, but you'd much rather have it if you have somebody on second or first and you kind of stretch it out. And I think making sure that we just kind of get the base on balls up a little bit and kind of just being more, I want to say like disciplined, because obviously we haven't seen a game yet because they haven't been home yet. So it's not like we've been able to see anything. But I think the one thing just to get the on base percentage up that like everybody knows, just like try to increase walks a little bit, and I don't know how hard it is, especially with kind of softball and stuff, but it's the same thing. Like if something's close and you don't really like it, just try to foul it off and battle at the plate. And I think that's the one thing. It just takes a lot of discipline. And I know our girls have that. We'll be able to do that easy. It's just kind of having that discipline when you're at the plate to be able to get on base, because base runners mean runs. And I mean, if you can get those hits in every once in a while, but hey, we much rather have base runners. So yeah, that's the one thing.
I'm rolling back to for those that have seen the movie Moneyball, when
he gets on base.
Right? That's how you win games. You get on base. No, that's exactly right. So I did notice that as well. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think, great teams. 278 batting average, very solid. Obviously, you'd like that to be up more towards 300, but good teams get on base 45% of the time, right?
45. So you'd love to see it over 45 or even 500 like half the time, because once you do that, it's a whole different game plan for the opposing pitcher. When you got a person on first, or you got even a person in scoring position, they're pitching a whole bit different way. They're not going to give you anything in the zone. They're always going to try to have to hit their spot where it's maybe hitting the corner or painting the edges of the zone or something like that. And when you're in the driver's seat as a batter, and you know that they're trying to make it so that way they're not giving you anything good because they don't want you to, advance the runner at all or get on base again and stuff, and kind of keep that train rolling. It's such a confidence booster, and it's such a thing, especially as the batter, where you're like, all right, if you give me anything close, I'm gonna do some damage with it. And when you know that you're in the driver's seat, it's just crazy how much better you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's key when discipline, especially in a sport like softball. But I think it's going to be a fun weekend. Being able to take on two GLIAC teams, and definitely two beatable GLIAC teams going into this part of the year, because we're right now ranked right around where Wayne State is, following up on Sunday. So that's going to be a crucial game for us, and we'll see who gets the start, because we're obviously pitching wise we haven't been terrible. We've definitely gotten our fair share of getting rocked a little bit, and that's obviously going to take time. So we got two freshmen on the hill. Mackenzie Cleland's been great. She's got 5 wins on the season so far. Christina Barr, Christy Gray, Aaron Gallagher, not far behind. They have their share of struggles, but a lot of season left, a lot of time to turn it around and be able to put together a very solid campaign moving forward.
Exactly.
Yep. So moving on over into the final previewed sport on the Ferris State docket, we have golf in action here later this week. Kind of going into next week, actually.
Yeah, they're going to be both. Monday.
Men's golf will be at the Findlay Spring Invitational, coming off of a great performance at the SVSU Classic. So really looking forward to seeing that momentum roll over. And I think really you look a lot at what this team has done. We're seeing a lot of great players that have stepped up. We saw, some great performances from the SVSU Spring Invite just last week. From Thomas Hersey, and then even the Brown Golf Intercollegiate Tournament as well the week before. And seeing like Shane Buffet stand out in that one as well. We've seen a lot of great performances across the board, and then somebody great has stepped up. What would be the key thing, especially going down to Augusta, is being able to have everybody have those peak days at the same time on the same round. That would be huge for us, because, obviously last week, having that huge round 2 improvement from round 1 was huge. But if you have that little bit better first round, that was really the difference between teams that were in third and where we were around 7th and 8th.
You're looking at a podium finish rather than kind of on the outside looking in. And I think that's the one thing too, is just kind of, it's a little bit different when you kind of are just doing the practice rounds and you get into the real deal, because especially with round 2, you've kind of found a groove from day 1 and stuff. And you can practice all you want on the courses and kind of play each hole as many times as you want when it's like the practice day or right before the first round starts. But once you kind of get a feel for the competition that you're going to be playing with, like who's in your group and stuff like that, it's a lot different too. Like when you're kind of doing that. Obviously we haven't really done much kind of with competitive golf or anything like that, but it's the same thing. Like when you've never played with some people or whatever, or you get matched with like the one golfer, the two golfer, or whatever spot you are on the team, and you get matched with these guys who, in different conferences or, across, like the way that they have to practice is so much different than you. So like when you get into it, it's a whole lot of different things that are culminating so that when round 2 comes around, you're a lot more comfortable. And I think that's the reason we found the jump. But like you said, making sure that we're able to play really consistently and low in round 1 is going to be the difference for us to be able to make it to the top. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing, especially with this one, because we've been making consistent moves down. I mean, and especially the one before with the Brown Golf invite or whatever. We had the same thing. Had not a super great day one. Was able to improve on day two. Placed 13th. Then we do the same thing at the SVSU invite, and now we're gonna probably see it at Findlay too. So that's the one thing coming Monday is I think we're gonna be having a pretty solid round one.
Yeah, and I mean, really, we're not totally like, and we're not out of any of these tournaments by
no chance.
Like, well, I mean, we look back at the SVSU spring invite, the winner, Southern Indiana, was at 588. We were at 606. Like, that's not even like, I wouldn't say that's far off at all. I mean, that's what, 18 strokes. I mean, you can kind of equate that.
It's like a bad hole for each. It's like you just take the worst hole that you've had for each year golfers and kind of just subtract one.
Yeah,
just a little more consistent.
And that's the I think some people. Like, I know, especially like math people and like myself would say, oh, I mean, they're playing one stroke better on every hole.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to realize you're carding 5 rounds. You're carding 5 players' scores. So in reality, in that case now, you're going to use the 18 divided by 5 action, which, I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but it's much significantly smaller. That's down basically 3.5 shots. Did I just get that on the money from my head? 18 divided by 5, 3.5. Well, it's kind of close to that. 17.5, isn't it?
You're a mental math wizard. Mental math wizard.
Close.
It's all good.
You know what I mean, though. But it's not one stroke every 18 holes, one every 3 holes for each player.
Mm-hmm.
Now it starts to be like, oh, minuscule. And that's really how impressive that a lot of these tournaments are, and especially the competition that we play, and that we are playing really well. And I think a lot of people, they don't have the equate of being able to understand and analyze the numbers from that perspective, as opposed to, oh man, we were 18 shots off the lead. We're all right, but we're not. No.
Mm-hmm.
We're great. And that can simply be like one guy, once again, like we said, one guy has a bad round and shoot maybe 5, 6 over their normal score, which happens, by the way, especially in a sport like golf, where there's a lot of times you can go through those streaky runs. I mean, simply you can subtract that. And if you have a good round, then you can make your way up the field. But you're even able to have all those at the same time. That's what makes those teams championship contenders, to be able to turn it up the same tournament and be able to rock it one round through at a time, each round throughout the weekend. And then that's what gets you to hold the trophy up like we did a few years ago.
Exactly. Definitely going to be looking forward to a lot of improvement and some pretty solid play from everybody. But hopping into the last thing, we forgot to mention it last time. We got some former hockey players that are going pro. Which is awesome, especially Ethan Stewart, our captain. He signed with the Tulsa Oilers of the ECHL. Love to see it. Thanks, Captain. And who did Liam McDougall sign with again?
Did he go to Cincinnati? Is that correct?
Cincinnati, that's right. So we got 2 former Dogs on the way to the pros. So
you know the saying, you can get there from here.
Exactly.
It might be a football primary, but it can relate to other sports, as you see right now. It can always
go from different sports. And that's one thing, too, is we're definitely looking forward to following their journeys for as long as their pro hockey career lasts. And it sucks that they're not going to come back for their 5th year, but wish them the best in their endeavors.
We wish them the best of luck. Hey, it's pro hockey getting up there. So, I mean,
why not get paid for what you love to do?
Why not be able to take a shot and a swing at the pros? I mean, obviously, for sure. But one more thing to mention as well, before we talk about college hockey, because that is definitely something people should know about. Walt Kelser, all-district first team, announced just today. So congrats to Walt. Final season,
well done,
getting the recognition for him. So congrats to him. But Frozen 4 time. No, the Dogs are not in it, but some of our fellow conference foes are, and some I think we're kind of rooting for. I know our Ferris Twitter handle.
Yeah, it's a little bit, but
we've been starting to kind of unveil that we might be rooting for them. It's like a mutual respect.
Hey,
we hope you win.
When you got conference people in the tournament, you're always rooting for them.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm excited for some college hockey. I cannot wait so much. It's going to be a blast. What do you want to do? Go through kind of the seeds and like the stuff like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, really looking at, for those that don't follow college hockey as closely.
A little bit smaller than the March Madness tournament.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's the winners of each of the conferences, and I think there's only 8 conferences or is it 5 or 6 conferences in all of college hockey, and then it's kind of just whoever is the better teams throughout. So we'll start with the Albany seeds because our what'd you say, rival?
Yeah.
I guess Minnesota
Foe,
State.
yeah.
We beat them.
The
So there's that one. The Mavericks of Minnesota State. They're number 1 in the Albany seeds. They'll be taking on Harvard first round. Harvard's not too bad. They are in the Hockey East Conference, and that's kind of more of the. I don't know. It's not as big as a CCHA, but it's also not like as. It's about the same size. Like it's not like a crazy like breeding ground for a lot of stuff. I know like Boston College is in there and stuff, and Boston University and stuff. So there's those good teams, but
there's good teams, and I feel like obviously we're not in the same sector of the country. Like we have Minnesota. That's how hockey kind of gradually makes Michigan more hockey prominent with those surrounding states, and even you could throw in Wisconsin.
They're in ECAC hockey, not Hockey East. I apologize.
Yeah.
Which is most of the. It's like all the Ivy League schools.
Yeah. So you'd have like Boston. Well, would that be?
It's Brown, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Princeton, and then you also have like Quinnipiac, Colgate and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, play smart. That's what you're gonna have to do. They're gonna play smart, so you got to play smart too.
A little bit of controversy though, because Michigan has the number 1 overall seed, but they're 29-9-1 overall, and Minnesota State's 35-5. So I don't know how Michigan got placed over Minnesota State. I think it's probably just because of who they played so far.
Yeah.
But Big Ten was kind of lacking a little bit.
Just
this
a little
year.
bit.
So that's the one thing. And then to kind of finish out the Albany seedings, North Dakota and Notre Dame are going to be taking on each other. And Notre Dame's in the Big Ten for this. They're not independent in hockey. So that one's going to be pretty solid. I'm looking forward to see how Minnesota State does. It's some pretty solid competition there. If they're able to play up to what we know that they're able to do, then they're going to be fine. But I mean, they also are known to slip up a few times. Not many times because they only have 5 losses, but we'll see how it goes. Allentown now, the number 1 seed in Michigan. They're 29-9-1, like I mentioned before. They're going to be taking on American International. American International's all right. They're kind of a sleeper team that came out of nowhere. They're 22-12-3 overall. They've been pretty solid on the defensive side, but Michigan has arguably one of the greatest one of the greatest first lines in college hockey history, with all 5 of them going to the next level next year.
This is where I would almost this would be kind of a cool idea if they would have taken, instead of just an expansion pluck and pick players in the expansion draft and being able to take a couple players from each team for an expansion franchise like the Kraken, could they just move that Michigan line and start them in that spot of a franchise, and then you can just build off the rest of it? You know how cool that'd be? Them be able to play together. Then the Kraken wouldn't be so bad, probably, but we can skip that part.
Yeah, well, we'll see how they play in that one, but I'm pretty excited for that type of thing. And then Quinnipiac, who is one of the better teams in the nation. I think they finished out the season, 5th or 6th in the actual rankings, and then some people kind of put them farther up in their own personal ones, but they're going to be taking on St. Cloud State, who's in the NCAC or NCHC, I think it is, who Minnesota, Duluth, like Miami, Denver, those type of colleges are in that one. So
the Midwest to kind of rocky up
it's like
north.
It's like the ones that are in between like the CCHA teams, and then like NCHC is like everybody past the Mississippi River. Yeah, like that's what the NCHC is.
Yeah, is Alaska then still? Would they
Alaska, Anchorage? They're both independents right now.
That's what I figured. So I wonder if they're going to join a conference soon.
Maybe we'll see them in the CCHA, since we saw them in the WCHA.
What if they just played an entire season where they just play each other? Anchorage versus Alaska. It's just 28 game season.
Yeah, just whoever can beat the two the most, I'll be fine.
And the winner gets the state, like they get claim of the state for the year. Hey, there you go.
We'll see how that goes.
Intrigue.
It's going to be pretty solid. But then in Loveland, Colorado, in the Loveland seeding, Denver got the top 1 in there. So they're going to be taking on UMass Lowell, who, if you remember last year, they got knocked out. I think it was in the quarterfinals. I think it was. So they had a pretty solid shot for the title, but they're going to be trying to beat down on the, what is Denver's, are they the Bulldogs too, or no?
University of Denver.
They're the Pioneers. That's what it is.
Pioneers. That's correct.
Pioneers, baby. We'll see what goes on with them. But Denver's kind of looking back to getting back. Or like they're always a good team, but they haven't really been seeing the success that they have since a couple years ago, kind of in the 2010s, where they made a couple of trips to the national championship and the Frozen Four. So we'll see what goes on with that. And then our guys, Michigan Tech Huskies, they're going to be taking on Minnesota Duluth, the other Bulldogs.
That's a toughie, man.
That one's going to be tough for them. I think they'll be able to pull it out. They're very similar teams, almost identical records. Minnesota Duluth is 21-15-4, and then Michigan Tech is 21-12-3. So you definitely know that their ability to move around the puck is going to be something that Minnesota Duluth is going to be trying to finish, because if we remember, and if you've seen Michigan Tech in person, they are wizards with how they can move the puck
the
around.
Movement is next level.
It's
I would honestly argue that Loveland Regional, like the winner of Duluth Tech, could beat Denver. Hypothetically.
100%.
I would agree that. I mean, Denver's a great team, but
I
both
think,
of those teams, I
honestly
saw that
think
matchup. I was like, ooh.
this one is probably going to be the most competitive, I think, out of all of them, because
I would agree.
like if you look at like where these guys are at, like they aren't like the highest seedings or anything, but who they've lost to and how close they've been. Like Michigan Tech, their losses are from like really close games with Minnesota State. I mean, they've kind of went toe-to-toe with Bemidji a little bit. I mean, they beat us both times, but we still, gave them a good run for it. But that's going to be one thing. I haven't really paid too much attention to Minnesota Duluth, but they're going to be pretty solid anyways, since they're in the NCHC, and you got teams like Omaha, North Dakota, St. Cloud State, Western Michigan. A lot of those, they kind of ran the table a little bit with the top 25 seedings, as I think it was like 6 of them were all ranked throughout the season. And then the last one finishing out in the Worcester seeds, excuse me. It's not the sauce.
Worcestershire?
It's the town in Maryland, Worcester, Maryland. At the DCU Center, Western Michigan is going to be taking on Northeastern, the Huskies versus the Broncos. Western Michigan having one of the most historic seasons in their what is it? Program history. I was going to say organization's history, but it's not an organization. But that's the one thing I'm looking forward to for them, is they have been playing really solid. We saw them early on in the season, but they've been able to really develop into a very solid team and play solid, as my voice cracks right there. But once again, the NCHC running the table a little bit. And then closing out the last game, Minnesota, the Golden Gophers are going to be taking on the reigning champions, Massachusetts.
That's going to be a good one, too.
That one's going to be a pretty solid one to watch. Minnesota's been playing pretty solid. They were 1-on-1 against Michigan basically all throughout the season. Michigan was able to top them in the Big Ten championship, but because of how good Minnesota's record is, they got a spot in. And Massachusetts not playing as well as last year. Not to mention last year they were a sleeper pick to win the whole thing. They weren't really expected to, but they made kind of not a Cinderella story, but a bracket buster nonetheless. So we'll see how it goes. But there's a lot of them that are sticking out to me. What ones are kind of catching your eye a little bit, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Minnesota, UMass, and then Duluth and Tech is obviously the ones that I'm going to be watching. I think that you look at what Western's doing. I mean, this would be kind of like the team that you'd be like, they're the 1 seed, but you're kind of like, you hope that they win it all, Like, if we equivalate it to March Madness, you'd kind of see like Michigan would be Gonzaga. It's like, yeah, they're probably the undisputed number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have like Minnesota State as like Arizona, the quoted smaller basketball program, but have had one of the most prominent seasons. And then you'd have like Denver, and then like probably like a Kansas. They're always going to be there. They're always going to be really good. And then you have like Western, that's kind of like in this case, that they would kind of be, I guess, you'd put them as like the Baylor, that have had like a fantastic year. They've been there before, and they're still building their program even higher. I mean, especially with the campaign they've had this year.
But
so
it's not out of character for them to be losing a like game that they should win.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I guess the one thing is, how consistent are they going to be when they come to Worcester?
Exactly. So
I always want to say Worcester, but
Worcestershire
sauce.
Oh yeah, in Chex Mix, man. That stuff's delicious. I'm getting hungry now. We should probably take a break so I can get a snack.
You did just come back from a workout today, but if you do want to watch all these, they will be on ESPN Plus, ESPN2, ESPNU, and ESPN News. And then the times for these, the Worcester, Maryland, that seating is going to be on March 27th. Also on March 27th is the Allentown seatings, and then the day before that on for Loveland and Albany, they're going to be on March 26th at 4 p.m. and 6:30.
All right, so there you go. There's the times, and you can watch some college hockey. Trust me, you will not be disappointed.
Here's the one thing, though, before we go to the break. The one thing that I wish they would do, especially for these like opening rounds, let the higher seed play host. Because that atmosphere for those would be crazy. Yeah. If you didn't see what happened, Minnesota was playing host to Michigan for the Big Ten championship. Dude, That atmosphere was
Yikes.
ridiculous. A packed barn. It was insane. Like that whole atmosphere, it was just loud from start to finish. If they did that, even for the second round too, I think if you just kind of did the higher seating and then kind of moved to kind of the Garden because it's going to be in Boston this year. But if you move to kind of like that neutral site for the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, I think people would not be mad about that because the atmospheres you get in those barns and how crazy that would get, wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah. Could you like imagine? I mean, it'd be pretty sick if we got to host like at Engelgleben, but I mean, you go to Yost. Oh,
Yost is crazy. Ohio State is crazy.
I'm shaking
the MAC
in my
is crazy
boots.
for Michigan Tech.
Yep.
I mean, Minnesota State's
any
is
Minnesota team, really, honestly.
Minnesota hockey is just another level.
Yeah, it's kind of Michigan football to Minnesota hockey.
That's kind of what it is.
That's what it is. So, but we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to go grab a snack, Joe, and then we'll be right back with the latest in NFL free agency and trade rumors right after this. Over the past 2 years, this show has changed a lot, but one thing that has always stayed the same is our podcast platform and distributor. Anchor.fm is the one-stop shop to create, distribute, and monetize your podcast all for free. There's built-in uploading options and editing tools so that you can make and create and publish your episodes with ease and have all sorts of exclusive options as well as sponsorships, subscriptions, and even monetize ads as well. You can have all the analytics, all the insights to make your show number one. So if you're thinking about making a podcast, look first at Anchor by Spotify. That's anchor.fm. Welcome back. Second half. NFL has been absolutely bonkers, Joe.
Ridiculous.
I mean, I don't think we've ever had an offseason like this ever.
No.
In recent my recent memory.
Ridiculous.
This is insane. We got GOATs unretiring. We got superstars requesting trades. And, I mean...
We got what thought to
every
be
team wants a new quarterback.
We thought franchise quarterbacks would stay where they're at. Some of them are leaving. Some of them are staying. I mean, we got Tyreek Hill. What the heck is going on with that? Not sure if that's going to be doing anything there, but... I don't know, dude. NFL free agency this is probably one of the craziest ones that we've seen in a long while. Especially, we can start with that Tyreek Hill trade. We can get the biggest one right out the way.
Let's do it.
Dolphins are trying to build something for a guy who can't even throw a ball. For a guy who can't even throw a ball accurately, man. You got Waddle now. You got Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins, but you got Tua at the quarterback. Yeah. Are they trying to make it so that way he can just kind of throw it anywhere in the vicinity so that way they can just catch it? Or what are they trying to do there?
I guess. I mean, there's so many memes out right now of Tua. And like, there's like, I know one was.
There's like the one of like the. It was like Tyreek in. This is going to be Tyreek in Miami. And
60 yards downfield. And they're just like, where's the ball?
And then it's like 20 yards short or something like that.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, like Tua's not terrible.
No,
but like
stop slandering him that badly.
Yeah,
He's
it's
not
just
that. Like they're comparing him to that
culture.
Tim Tebow wobbly pass. Stop it.
He's all right, but like I just think when it gets to that point where you're gonna have to send either one of them downfield, like that's when it's gonna get a little spotty because his deep ball is a little bit inaccurate. But I think with what you've been seeing with Tyreek and kind of with Jalen, like if you do like those short kind of like slant routes and stuff like that, those button hooks, the screens, we're going to be seeing a pretty solid offense. And I think the Dolphins are going to be gearing up for a second place in their division. I don't think they're going to kind of be able to beat Buffalo at all, but I think they're probably going to give them a little bit of a run for their money. I think this is a pretty solid pickup for them, but what are the Chiefs going to do now? What do they got to do to be able to fill this void?
Well, I mean, they made the Juju Smith-Schuster move, and I think that one kind of... This is where I'm very interested to hear the insider on this because... I mean, they signed Juju, and then it was almost like 2 days later, and now it's like, uh-oh, the talks have stalled. Were they actually stalled before? And then now this was the move, they made that move to compensate because they knew this was coming? Or was this just a spur-of-the-moment thing? Because, I mean, to me, it's kind of hard to believe that the Chiefs wouldn't want to keep that group together. I mean, obviously... There's no question that Tyreek Hill wanted the dough. I mean, being able to sign the extension literally almost an hour after he was traded for $120 million over 4 years with the Dolphins. But I mean, the Chiefs are in a spot where, I mean, now they got a really nice haul that they can use to be able to pick up a replacement. Because I mean, now they got a second, fourth in this year's draft. They got the first round selection at number 29. Then they got a couple picks next year, including a sixth. And I think there's a conditional one that might fall between 3-5. So you got some pieces for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
I was not going to expect we're going to have a Tyreek trade straight up for 5 picks. That was just like, wait, what? That was kind of crazy. And I mean, that's the story of Miami's offseason. It's like new coach, new philosophy. Let's get some new players. Let's get some star-studded players, and let's give this fan base a reason to believe again. Certainly, they've done it. This is insane what they've been doing this season.
Yeah, they've been really making a lot of moves, and like I'm pretty excited to see what it's going to happen, because I remember when like Tua got drafted, they were like, all right, like maybe this kind of be something a little bit, like he's a good quarterback, but he didn't have any pieces around him really, and he was able to learn behind Fitzmagic his first year. But then you get Waddle, and it's like, all right, the Alabama boys are back at it. Like we'll see what goes on there. Not the greatest season they had, but now that you have 2 weapons there on the receiving end, like now defenses might be spread a little bit thin. You do have Tua's ability on the ground, but it's just going to be if he's able to kind of get that deep ball under control and kind of pinpoint that a little bit. Dolphins could be scary next year. It's just all about this offseason, what they do with training camp and stuff like that. Yeah,
they're going to have to make some moves, I think, for long term to save some money, because I mean, obviously they have Tua. They also signed Teddy Bridgewater to a 1 year, $6.5 to back him up. But I mean, they've made some. I really like some of the moves that they've made. I mean, just bringing in Mike McDaniel, I think, is something that's going to revitalize the franchise. But I mean, they've brought in some top tier guys that really I don't know if they ever believe that there's a limit on running backs, since they considerably have 6 of them that you can make an argument could be a starter or at least in the rotation now on that team. I mean, they just got Duke Johnson released to the Buffalo Bills, so that's one of them gone. But now you got Chase Edmonds, which I think could be their day one starter, honestly, right away. I mean, you obviously had Myles Gaskin as kind of that guy, but then you also bring in Raheem Mostert, who I think really just needs to have he had a great season 2 years ago to make it to the Super Bowl, but I think he just needs a new fresh start, because I mean, especially the injury-ridden San Francisco is not helping his career, so I think that might be a good move for him. And then, I mean, they even got some other guys in there as well that they've been able to sign, and I mean, they got Connor Williams, so really very good guard for them. I mean, they were able to sign Teron Armstead. That's a huge move at left tackle to protect Tua and keep him on his feet. Cedric Wilson is a guy that we expected to get the bag from another team and leave Dallas. So I think that's just I think this is all a really good, solid offseason that we're seeing from Mike McDaniel. And I think that's something that Dolphins fans should be happy about, seeing a little new face of the franchise here.
Exactly. And I mean, not only that, but like you got Teddy Bridgewater as well. That's going to be pretty solid for the backup and stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of other teams too that I've kind of been making a couple moves that I've seen, especially, I mean, we talked about Denver as well, getting Russell Wilson. That one's going to be pretty solid for them. I'm excited to see what he's able to do there. It's going to be weird not seeing him with that 1-2 punch with DK Metcalf. But, I think with this, you're really going to be seeing a great year from Jerry Jeudy, because he has not really had anybody to kind of give him the abilities to show off his talents on the receiving end. And when you got Russell Wilson, who is able to make those plays, and you'll be able to kind of see them really pair up into a really good duo of quarterback and wide receiver. And that's one thing that's going to be pretty solid. Especially for them, that they're trying to make a little bit of a run here. But I don't know. There's a couple of other teams too. I mean, what ones are you kind of catching your eye again other than the Dolphins? Yeah, I mean, Denver certainly is one, because, I mean, Russell Wilson was honestly one of my favorite players growing up. I even bought a Seattle jersey in my younger years for Halloween in honor of that guy. I love what he does on and off the field. So seeing him get a fresh start is going to be fun to watch. And I think this is John Elway saying, all right, he's not going to say he screwed up, but I think this is kind of the way, like, all right, my method's not working. We can't draft this first-round guy out of this school with this build and this throwing accuracy and this strength that literally it hasn't worked. He's tried it 3 times with Lynch, Simeon, and Osweiler, and it's not worked. So going in a different route, I think it's definitely worth for the franchise. Getting Randy Gregory to help out now with the loss of Von Miller is an absolutely huge steal. It's kind of hilarious how that ended up going for Dallas, but I think this is kind of the year of, this is the core we've built at receiver. Let's see how good they really are. Let's get them a really above average, I would say. It's not a harm to Russell Wilson, but comparably to the quarterbacks ever before him, as far as arm talents, not many. Bridgewater's all right. And then you got obviously the guys that I just mentioned that have really flamed out in the last 4 years. So there's a lot to look forward to. I mean, they did give up Shelby Harris. They did give up
Drew Lock and Noah Fant, but there's still a lot that you can do with this team because I think Alex O is a fantastic tight end, and I think that he'll fit in just well. And I think some people wanted him to get the starting spot or even give him more touches, and now that's going to certainly give him that opportunity. So, but I mean, the fact that they've brought on all this defensive talent as well. I mean, they have Surtain from last year's draft. I mean, that defense looks even better, and now you got a good, competent offense. Whew, look out! This might be the year that they can finally just claw out the Chiefs now that Tyreek Hill's gone.
Yeah, true. And I mean, you're talking about Cowboys as well. Amari Cooper is now with the Browns, which is going to be kind of different for them. Gallup is re-signing those, so that's going to be pretty solid there. There's one that I was looking for that I just saw. Oh, Chargers signing Khalil Mack. That's going to be a big one for them, especially. I think that's going to be solid, especially since they need a defensive ability there, because I think that's one of the main things that's going to be able to kind of push them over the hump a little bit is kind of being somewhere where you can have a little bit of a cushion for Herbert and the offense to be able to kind of, I wouldn't say like take like the foot off the pedal or anything, but like when they go out and they get stopped or whatever, that's not going to be such a detrimental thing now when you're actually going to have a defense that might be able to make a stop. They still got to make a couple more moves, I think, but especially with Khalil Mack being in the middle, that's going to be a force that's going to be disruptive a lot of the other teams' run offenses.
Yeah, a steal nonetheless. Literally getting Khalil Mack for a second and a sixth next year. I think
money.
A lot of
Easy
teams
money.
would take that deal. Detroit would honestly probably take that deal. Being as conservative as they have been so far, but we'll talk about that in just a second. I was about to say, I love what the Chargers are doing. I really love what the Chargers are doing because they recognize that they've already built something and all they need is that extra talent to get you over the hump. Because, I mean, you got a talented offense. You got a lot of great weapons. They re-signed Mike Williams. Love that move. They have Keenan Allen, who's going to be a stud. Austin Eckler. That offense we don't have questions about. The defense was some of the low points of this year. And then you go out and get Khalil Mack, a force on the outside linebacker position. Then you bring in J.C. Jackson, who literally has an eye for the ball 24/7. I mean, that's just those are just great moves for the defense. And then you got some other key players that aren't going to be necessarily talked about as much overall with a lot of these moves, like Sebastian Joseph, that be able to get him back to the $24 million contract up the middle at the defensive tackle position. And those are going to be key moves that will glue the defense all together. Now, to be able to get that pass rush with Joey Bosa and now pair a very good corner with Derwin James, you got one side of the field locked up for sure. And, I mean, you're able to spread them around. You're going to be able to force some turnovers and give Justin Herbert the ball more times. Who wouldn't want that, man? That guy's special, and this team could be special in what will be a loaded division this year now with what the Raiders have done as well.
Yeah, true. There's a whole lot of divisions I think that are going to get really shaken up with this moves that a lot of teams are making, especially kind of seeing a lot of different. I mean, Washington Commanders too. That's what I'm going to be looking forward to with Carson Wentz signing there. Kind of see like new name, new team. Who dis? Maybe we'll see something going on for them. But I don't know. There's a lot of teams I think that have definitely lost this. Free agency. I was going to say draft, but that's not correct. That have lost a free agency, but a lot of teams who are really looking forward to this next season who can really show a lot of success. So I don't know. I want football season to be here.
I want football season back ASAP. But yeah, I do think that there are some teams that have not done as much. I think some people realized, and obviously there's some huge trades going on as we speak right now. I think a lot of Falcon fans are feeling it right now, not having Calvin Ridley, and now you get rid of Matt Ryan in a trade with Indianapolis. So Indianapolis now takes another franchise guy for a 1-year contract. Now you could be quoted, it's just above average now, moving on from Carson Wentz. But I mean, now they're going with Marcus Mariota, which that move, it makes sense. I know Falcons fans don't like that. It makes sense, but it makes sense because, I mean, their relationship with Arthur Smith, I think is going to help him be able to get back to a starting role position. And I think Atlanta's kind of stuck in the middle. They don't know what they want to do because their defense is still so young, and the guys that they bring in for veteran presence are only 1-year, 2-year guys, and they can't sign them long term just because of them spending all of their money young for the offensively that they did with guys like Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, and those guys. So now some of those guys have moved on. Like Gage is now in Tampa Bay. So there's a lot that you can look at what the Falcons are doing and you can be like, this sucks because they're kind of now at the rebuild mode. But I think they realize what they did last year was a little bit higher than what their expectations were overall. So I think there has to be that discussion there.
Yeah, true.
So, but I think the number one team, obviously, that our friends and colleagues have been talking about for sure is what the Lions have been doing. And it hasn't been a whole lot of much. And I'll tell you what, I love it. And here's why. We haven't signed any big time caliber players to like huge multi-million-dollar contract, multi-year lockup guys. But we've made some very, very nice moves. And I think what Brad Holmes is doing, I'm starting to see the vision, and I'm starting to really, really dig what he's putting down here in Detroit. So, I mean, obviously a big one, DJ Chark, 1 year, $10 million. Love that because
needed that.
He came in the quote of the press conference. I know I watched part of this. He came for the culture. He understood what Dan Campbell was doing, and they were winning the same amount of games as with Urban Meyer. And he said it was a colossal difference by what he was talking about because he got the insider with Marvin Jones and Jamal Agnew over there. And they were saying, yeah, it's way different over there by what I'm hearing. And the reality of it is them recognizing it, boom, that's a home run. You already have the culture established. That's going to bring players to Detroit, the more wins we get every year, and the more we get this culture that's set up, we get these extra players developed, we're going to win more games, and that's going to get us to a position now where we can be in a spot like the Chargers, we can get in a spot like Denver, where we can make these big moves, and we can start actually making a push.
Yeah, that's the one thing is like, that's what we've been talking about for a while. Just the whole change, just the grit of Detroit that the team is embracing, that Dan Campbell is having everybody embrace in that organization. Because I'm seeing like what Dan Campbell's been able to do. It runs all the way from the janitors of the organization to the top name players, to Jared Goff, to all those guys who are going to be suiting up every Sunday and Monday and Thursday, whatever day the games are on. Like when you have players like that who are coming and say, I love the culture here. Like, that's the reason I'm here. And you see that, like, that's kind of getting spread out throughout the whole league. A lot of these players that are looking for places where they might want to play, and they might say, I want to be at a place where winning is valued, but winning by, playing hard and digging deep and going back to the way football is, like, supposed to be played. Like, that's the one thing that I think is really going to change for the better in Detroit is we have such a great culture, and we have such a great, I guess, like, inner like core, I guess, just with everybody that's been able to adopt it. And that's one thing is once you get everybody to buy in, then it's super easy to see success.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would say that the Lions are a year ahead, that we're already getting some of these younger free agent guys. Mike Hughes coming over from Kansas City, that's a huge asset. Chris Board coming over. Those guys will compete for starting jobs with some of our young players and being able to even mentor them to get them 2 years ahead in development as well. And I think this is the biggest thing to me. We look at all these guys that we've added to this franchise over the last year in the draft or in free agency or whatever. How many of them left? Not many. They're all coming back, and that tells me it's working. When you have a team that is in the bottom half of the league for the entirety of the season and at the bottom at one point with 0-8, and you got guys come like over 75% of your players that have signed at least a significant deal to be a part of the team. Obviously, practice squad goes in and forth across the league regardless, but when you got over that much people coming back every year, that tells me it's working. I mean, you got guys like Khalif Raymond, that you got guys even like you can throw in like a Tracy Walker that could have went elsewhere and maybe found another role for more money. But no, they stayed in Detroit because they recognize this is actually working. This is the way to go, and that they're going to see success down the road. And right now, the NFC, obviously they're going to have to get through Aaron Rodgers, but starting to go more wide open each and every year now that we literally are seeing teams like with players like Devontae Adams leaving the Packers. You got all like quarterbacks leaving the NFC, like Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson, like we mentioned earlier. And the NFC is looking pretty wide open right now. Looks like the Rams and the Packers. And outside of that, a lot of question marks.
Exactly. A lot of question marks. And that's what we like to see is it's going to be wide open. It's anybody's game. Yeah, there's going to be people who have some expectations for what Detroit's going to be. Maybe they're good. Maybe they're bad. But hey, as Detroit fans, it's only looking up from here.
Yeah. And obviously put the legal stuff aside. Deshaun Watson's going to be playing football again, which I think everybody's looking forward to seeing. And There's even rumors we might see Colin Kaepernick again. There's talks with him in Seattle. I could see them making that kind of a move or even trying to trade for Baker Mayfield, who wants out of Cleveland now that Deshaun Watson is there. And I mean, really, it's going to be a fun year. I'm really looking forward to seeing this NFL draft coming up, especially April. At the end of April, we'll do our mock drafts here after March Madness concludes. And I mean, that's going to be fun, Joe, because I think this could be the year the Lions could win the entire draft and be the best drafted team based on our capital.
I think so, too.
Should we trade out of number 2? I think that's a loaded discussion. How about we save that for next week? What do you say?
I love that.
All right, you're going to have to stay tuned and subscribe on the MVSP to learn more. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the MVSP. Hey, go follow our personal social media accounts on Instagram and Twitter, too. We'd love to interact as well. And until next Tuesday.
Take care, everybody.